I'll check the phone once more, but I don't see Darcy, and I don't see Alex, and I don't see Jonathan. Okay. Well, thank you very much. Welcome. Thank you. Here we are. The theme this week is reunion. For the record, the theme next week is banishing, welcoming.
Vanishing, welcoming?
Welcoming and the antonym, banish.
Banish. B-A-N. What happened?
You okay?
It didn't share between my two devices. That was weird.
Do you need the Wi-Fi password for here, or you're on to something else?
Well, maybe that. Yeah, it should. Don't let me hold the class up.
We'll just start when you're ready. Either of you can tell me if you see anybody log in. Pay attention to it. I thought we could. G3.
Was it welcoming and banishing two gerunds?
So usually when I'm writing the theme, I don't mean banishing and welcoming, I mean either. And it could be something where welcome is in the title, and it could be something a little bit more abstract that seems to fit the theme too. So that's fine too. Do you think, can you start us one of the Ursi poems that you read to me before for reunion? No, because they were both that's pretty good. Maybe the first one fits the theme better, and that would be the idea. So
Okay. To the Rain by Ursula K. Le Guin. Mother rain, manifold, measureless, falling on fallow, on field and forest, on house roof, low hovel, high tower, down welling waters all washing, wider than cities, softer than sisterhood, vaster than countrysides, calming, recalling, return to us, teaching our troubled souls in their ceaseless descent to fall, to be fellow, to feel to the root, to sink in, to heal, to sweeten the sea.
thank you very much. So just thinking about the idea of reunion. I think often we can see our way to understanding something that we can see as separate as not separate. And the idea of reunion is quite powerful. In fact, it's so powerful that I think in many cases we insist on not fully consciously insisting on separation so that we can enjoy reunion. Because the call of reunion is so powerful and it seems so noble and wonderful and healing and correct. that we actually have a mental separating. We'd be other eyes, something. Um, like, for example, if you see a dog curled up with a cat, you kind of, that feels different to you than seeing a dog curled up with a dog. A dog curled up with a dog is like, oh, that's sweet, they're friends. A dog curled up with a cat, you're like, oh man, I'm surprised. That's extra delightful because it's unlikely. But is it? Or have we just learned that dogs and cats are antagonistic? So when we see them unite, we think of it as um, more special than it might be, or more unusual. And further, if the idea is not togethering or uniting, but reuniting, then the considerations of reunion presuppose that things were once together. And if we presuppose that they were once together, do we actually suppose that they were together as in nearby, as in touching, but still separate or distinct? Or might they have been together in the sense of being one? And in the big, large scheme of things, a lot of us can find our way to understanding that all things are one. If that's the case, is there a reunion? Does it even exist?
I'd have to say yes. Maybe not on a cosmic scale, yes, but what I thought of was, since I travel back and forth like almost every week, there's a separation and a returning. And the poem that I wrote was about that, literally, although it was not based on that kind of travel. It was the vacation that I took,
Sure.
And so missed my week in Connecticut kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's what every poem that I looked at, because I usually start by just combing through literature, who's been writing about reunion and what are they writing about.
Right.
Most of it seemed to be about lovers or friends,
Mm-hmm.
or family or something like that. And I don't think there was a sad poem in there, maybe somber or quiet or something, not necessarily a joyous party kind of reunion, but it was seen as a positive thing, I guess, maybe the simplest way to put it. And I went like with that kind of thing, and I wrote a few via AI. It just like blew me away how easily it did it.
Mm-hmm.
But at 3 o'clock in the morning, I just said, no, I'm gonna write one.
Yeah.
And it just boom, it just came.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty cool.
So if your daughter moves to Europe to live, you're separated, but you really love her and she really loves you, and so you guys are not apart in the heart or in the mind, but you are physically apart. And then at some point you go to visit her in Europe, let's say, and so there's a reunion. Is that a complete reunion or a partial reunion? In other words, was it only the flesh that was apart, but not the heart and the mind? And if you forgive somebody, is that a reunion of the hearts?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And if a reunion is not complete, is it really a reunion? Or is it a partial re-coming together or something? Right. And if that's the case, does reunion exist? Can we do anything so holy? Right. Colloquially, we can't for sure, But, what does it mean to have a reunion. And I would say that it insists that things had once been a union. And if they were a union, were they separate? Or were they a thing that was part? And if that's the case, if they were a thing that became more than one thing, which at a later time reunites, does that mean a reunion is the recovery of a wound? And does that mean that differentiation is a wound? Or discernment?
Well, if you if you believe that everything is one, then it seems like that the thought of anything separate is a breakage of some sort. You know, it's a lack of faith, maybe. I don't know. I haven't thought that one out, but I mean, you're taking this to a place that I haven't been. So,
I'm going to just invite you to do a meditation. And I want to kind of share with you this idea. I've forgotten the math on it, but I could definitely calculate it again if I couldn't find the article. But the idea was, do you know how many atoms there are in a given volume? It was molecules, whatever, but just something very small. So we'll say atoms. And it's like you can't comprehend like a teaspoon of water has more atoms in it than stars in the universe or something. It's just like it's incomprehensible. And all of the water in the world is recycled. We're not particularly creating it or destroying it. It's just changing its phase. And if you were to put a spoonful of water in the ocean, there are so many atoms in that over some time, it will all be mixed in the ocean. Right? But it will be mixed in such a way that if you were to, at some later point, take a spoonful of the ocean, you cannot not have some of the atoms that were in the previous spoonful at any time in history in any of the world's oceans. Or to put it another way, the ocean that you drink of is the same one that Mohammed drank from, or the same one that Jesus drank from, or the same one that whoever drank from. You cannot avoid touching something that they touched. Or we could say that with breath. When you inhale, you are necessarily inhaling some of the particles that pass through Mussolini. And you could just do the math on it. Like it's just that straightforward. Now, like if I exhale right now, let's say for the first time, like a newborn, somebody in Bangladesh doesn't take in your atoms right away. It takes some time to mix, but in a reasonable amount of time, like a decade or whatever, you cannot take in that which wasn't taken in by anybody. So the question to consider is every inhalation a reunion? Are you physically connected to and touching something that was physically connected and within anybody else? Like, is every breath a visit to the gravesite of whoever you care about? Is every exhalation of yours work its way into the world such that people who you leave behind will one day carry it through their heart? So I'm going to invite us to sit in meditation for a couple minutes.
Point out a baby used to be 8. Now 9.
Mm. How do you guys feel?
Perplexed.
Yeah.
It's one of those awesome concepts that I had the other day, sitting on the back porch, Bobby, and I just noticed like all the photons
Mhm.
that were happening every single minute, every one of those leaves that I could see, and it just blew my mind how many there were. So the sun emits a photon and it hits a particular leaf, and that gets transferred into another photon. That photon ends, and a new photon hits my eye. And just that happens all the time. fast as it could possibly. I just like, holy shit. And it seems rather like that in the sense that the mathematics could say it's probably a high probability of breathing something that Mussolini breathed or ate or whatever. And it's an awesome concept.
There are more possible moves on the chessboard than there are atoms in the universe. You want to know what else is amazing? If you shuffle a deck of cards, statistically speaking, that particular shuffle of the deck has never existed and never will again.
That's not a huge number. It's 52.
I know that you
like
think,
it's so
but
big.
do the math, and it's not likely to ever exist again, and has never existed again. You want to know something else amazing? So if you get in a car and I say my car's really fast, I might say it's 0 to 60 in
7 seconds.
Sure, a faster car is 0 to 60 in 4 seconds or 3 seconds. Like, that's amazing, right? Or you might say, I got on a train, but it's a bullet train. After it starts up from the station, 6 minutes later, it's going top speed. I don't know, however,
300 miles.
whatever. And if you were going to try and get your car up to 90 on the highway or something, it takes some time for you to get there. And if you were to start running, it takes you a little bit of time to get to your top speed. But the top speed in the universe is 186,000 miles a second. And at the instant of a photon's birth, it is going that speed. It doesn't speed up.
And it never slows down.
And it never slows down. Well, it can be slowed down depending on the medium. But it not only reaches the highest speed, but it doesn't reach it.
It is.
It exists as. So there's no ramp up.
No acceleration.
just it's instantly as fast. That's amazing.
And there was something about the photon to itself only exists for a very, very small amount of time, even though it crosses the universe. When something stops it by noticing it or seeing it or reflecting it or something, it's had a very short life to itself.
Right, but it's not noticing it. It's not like Heisenberg thing at that scale.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, interesting.
Yeah, interesting stuff. I think I'll read. Go down to this one. This is called Pondside Padmasam. On arrival, a flurry of flutterings, a slew of slitherings, and a few each of crunchings and cracklings. I come to rest, and all that had long since come to rest is rustled to quickening unrest. The fish spin off into clouds and deeps. The birds seek the far-off trees and nearer leafed impenetrables. And for my troubles, well, why nature has scattered, skittered, and scurried off. But I sit still, a breath. And then another gentler, fuller, deeper. Soon enough as I sit, nature returns. A flash of red wing here come to dine, a silvered nose inquiring at me from the nearer depths. A squirrel resigned from trapezory and now scratching at pine needle beds. A snake slips by, and then atop a rock to bathe in light unperturbed. The The swallow's songs return, heralding a greater unseen chorus. I hark. A fish jumps, a water bug plays its circlery. Soon enough as I sit still. Nature returns. As true, yes, I return.
It's full of good imagery. It's lovely.
Thank you. Does anybody else have one they'd like to share?
Yeah, I'll read. I'll read the one that I wrote. Pretty short. It's not that bad. Okay. On a week's vacation, making new friends, seeing new places can be quite a treat. Returning to old ones when the week ends. Okay, now that's really sweet.
Maybe for Darcy, we can actually get her read it a second time, if you don't mind.
No, not at all. On a week's vacation, making new friends, seeing new places can be quite a treat. Returning to old ones when the week ends. Okay, now that's really sweet.
Yeah, thank you for that. I thought what we'd do is we could, because we don't have anybody here on Zoom. Does somebody have a pen? I probably do somewhere. Just who wants to start? I do.
Yes.
Oh, we're gonna write a poem.
Yeah, I think that'd be kind of nice. Yeah.
I can't write.
You do no wrong.
It should be readable.
think it's done.
It's done.
I think so. Yeah. You want to read?
I'll try.
Well, you seem concerned that yours couldn't be read. So
Just,
Oh.
is that a loft in your first one?
Yeah, I think so.
Fault?
yeah.
I'll find it.
Yeah. That's what happens when I write fast.
That makes sense.
Thank you. So Sarah and I were sitting in front of Simon's in town, and they closed. But we were sitting up front, and she saw a little ant inside, walking with this little earth blue globe piece of plastic.
Huh.
Yeah.
The restaurant was closed.
The paint-worn oven, and stop me if I'm making like an error reading it. The paint-worn oven comes to cool. The lights only just oft. A minuscule heroic ant carries aloft a plastic globe, atlasing this blue. Her hand reflected through thick planed glass, holding his back.
Plated?
Pardon?
I think I mean painted.
Paned gas? Paned glass?
Glass, painted glass.
I thought she wrote plated. That's what I thought I read.
Be a plane.
Thick paned glass, holding his back, holding the space. Low for ant to follow?
For the ant.
For the, oh, that's nothing. Okay. For ant to follow, for the ant to follow?
For ant.
For ant to follow. They are joined by multitudes of silent, to me, formicans swarming in their excavations. We each in our days dig up our past, our sorry,
Coals
cooled. I'll figure that eventually. Sorry, our cools cold, our lights
Our coals cooled, like the oven. Our coals cooled.
cooled,
Our passions cooled.
our lights let low, our spaces held long after we passed. We came to know, we came to know, we left at last. Now let go. That's kind of good.
Yeah.
It's pretty fun, huh? I like that we did it.
I wonder if a group poem is different if instead of just the first person setting something in motion, if there's a shared remember that concert we were at? And then everybody, something like that. I wonder if it's different.
Well, that kind of happened with this because she told the next part of the same story, but you weren't there, so yours went
Correct.
to a different place. So it kind of did that. Like we had a bit of that experience,
Right.
and then you were just kind of, well, I don't know the story, so you were just wherever you went,
Right.
which is pretty cool. Yeah, I think I call that diary poetry. I like that kind of thing where just in a sort of poetic way, it just like journalistically recount this happened and that and this and that, but I'm just kind of using florid language or whatever and rhyming or something. But I'm just like, this happened and that happened and that happened and I'm done. And it's probably allows easier access to the critic because I'm just reporting what happened. I'm not writing a poem. I'm not doing something good. I'm just saying what, and that might give you access where you might feel like, oh, I'm not good enough or something like that. Well, I'm just writing what happened, and that's what you did on this. She was like, here's the next part. So it probably came easy in that regard, and hopefully we're in a bit of a poetic mode. So it came out more poetically than you just saying, here's what happened today.
Yeah, you use bigger words or
Yeah,
you know.
yeah. Or you go into a little bit more detail about descriptively,
Yeah.
which I think is pretty cool. But I like when you started to say excavations, and I started to think other ways to dig up, and I thought about memory and all that kind of thing. And then I thought like the oven's getting cold and the lights are going down, the store's closed. There's a thing of glass where like you're seemingly there, but you're separated. And I thought that's why it turned it into like longing and something more existential. So Luna Wolf picked one to read.
Before we go on, I just wonder, how long can a line of poetry be? Because you typically have it's written, or there's a screen that you look at it on, or something like that. And maybe there's indent to let you know that it's the same line or something like that. But how long can a poem be? A line of a poem be?
Yeah, a lot of times there's different ways to sort of grammatically show that you mean an end of a line rather than an end of a page or the margin place.
And it seems like poetry is often phrases that are either juxtaposed or add on or flow or something like that.
I think like seasoned poets tend to be very intentional about that. So maybe, like it's justified on the left side for the most part. Say you're reading it in a book or even on the screen. And there's maybe like, I don't know, 8 words in each line, but then sometimes to be playful, but also very intentional, like that sounds like a fun experiment, like to extend the line much longer than that until you can't anymore, or even just playing with placement of words or phrases or parts of a thought that add almost like visually a weight to them, or so it can become a little playful. Yeah, exactly.
So that's AI writing in the style of E. Cummings.
Yeah.
So boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
And it struck me. And some of them are one word in the line. Most of them are one or two words in each line. Very different way of doing it than putting in 2 couplets or putting it in quatrains. Or
I write a lot that way, where it's visually presented, and I find it fairly frustrating because as soon as you send it to somebody, it's displayed differently. Or I wrote it when it was on WordPress, but now it's on the docx, and it's not. So I have to like somehow save it as a PDF, so it's an image. So
and all your bolding and underlining,
all that sort of stuff. And sometimes that's really important to me for certain pieces.
I think it may help create the sense of the rhythm that it's read in, while also like how it's read. And I mean that like in a very deep way, like yes, how it's read, but also just like with that example, it's this like fluid carryingness of like the words, but also there's one word on the right and then a space and then the start of the other one on the left. So it affects how it feels, how it's read, how the breath moves with it, like the spaces between, some say, are just as important, like we were talking about with music,
Yeah, I don't have a sense at all of how to do that well at all. I don't even.
Have you
don't like try to put things in that visual
Mhm.
kind of way. I just doesn't. I don't have a sense of hope. That would seem right to me.
Mhm, mhm.
I'm more still working on a little rhythm and rhyme kind of thing, just simple kinds of stuff. And it's, to see what's called good poetry or, well thought of poetry, do that. It's like, well, how did he get to that? I mean, what was behind that kind of thing? And I don't understand it, I guess, much. I don't see why he would have written that way. Kind of
Maybe
stuff.
it's,
I don't know
and
his
I could be
poetry
wrong about
that
this, but maybe it's this sense of confidence, just like with a brushstroke. Like there are confident brushstrokes.
like calligraphy.
Yeah, with that intention again, there's this confidence.
There's probably false
Yeah.
confident brushstrokes too.
Yeah, and so
Where-
some people could, it could be false confident. But I wonder if that could be related somehow.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think I said that before in this, but I was listening to an interview with a poet, and I wish I could remember which poet it was. But one of the early questions in the interview was, how do you define a poem? Which, of course, is really just to have a conversation. We're not going to write a dictionary definition, but it'd be interesting how this person responds to it today, And they said, he said very simply, he said, prose respects the margin. Poetry does not respect the margin. It's not interested in writing until the ding of the typewriter and go to the next line. It writes until it's done.
Yeah.
Which is such an interesting idea of like, it's not interested in the constraints of the form. It's just interested in expressing itself, which is how I saw it.
Yeah.
But I like that a lot. That simple idea of it, which of course you could immediately give me an example where that's not true.
Right.
Fair enough. But I did like that
Yeah.
kind of view of it. I found that moving. So that's what I thought of as soon as you asked that question.
Yeah. I wanted to just add that with poetry and not disrespecting, but just being creative with the margins. There's also this sense of giving a word, which can be very powerful, and maybe a phrase or what is trying to be conveyed in the assemblage of words, giving it space, and there is this space in the medium of paper or screen or writing, and that becomes part of it. Prose is
run on,
right,
almost in comparison anyway.
sentences and stories.
So this is what
poetry
pared
also.
down its important.
Yeah,
to-
yeah.
Boom.
Yeah.
This is what's important here,
Mhm.
not all the other words that are around it or something.
Yeah,
I tried to
magnitude of it.
simplify it
Yeah.
to its core or something like that. It's good. That's good.
Okay, ready for a reading here? So this is by Margaret Gibson, a book edited by Margaret Gibson. And this poem is called Acqua Alta, which is Italian, like Venice, or Italian, particularly high tide. Acqua Alta. And this is by Laura Mazza Dixon. When Venice floods, as it has for centuries, the waters of the Adriatic Sea cross the piazza and climb the steps of the basilica like pilgrims. The rest of us pull on our boots and cross on narrow wooden walkways, waiting in pairs to enter the ancient bronze portals of San Marco. A sacred darkness lies within, a world broken, gleaming in tiny squares of gold, glass and stone, mosaics of the stories of a world being made. At the top of a cupola, God reaches toward a dark orb, Wide rays of light stream from a red sun and a gray moon. A dove flies above the watery depths. Land appears. Plants and trees begin to grow. When birds fill the sky, fishes fill the water. Pairs of dromedaries, lions, leopards, striped boar, and elephants appear beneath God's outstretched hand. Venice has lasted many centuries at sea level, resting on wooden poles driven so deep into the airless clay beneath the water that they are immovable, petrified. In the lagoon, crabs and shrimp, octopus and squid, sea bass and anemones thrive in the marsh, where tidal currents meet freshwater rivers. Gulls and cormorants gather by the fishing boats. Herons perch on the bricole that mark the channels where ships once carried silks and spices back from Egypt. In the cupola, the figure of Adam is molded from dark material by God himself and led through a door into a verdant garden. After he names the gathered animals, Adam lays his hand on the lion's head. Then he falls asleep under a tree to wake with Eve beside him. All is well until they decide not to listen to God. God escorts them back out the door into a dry place where nothing can grow. In the Old Testament, no matter how many prophets cried out against the greed and wickedness on earth, no one seemed to pay any attention. No one but Noah, who walked with God and listened to his growing frustration with the selfishness and corruption of those he had created with such care. God is so angry, he has determined to destroy every living thing on earth with a flood, and tells Noah exactly how to build an ark. Lately, the Aqua Alta visits Venice more often, sweeping over the islands that protect the lagoon, climbing further up the steps of the basilica. Last November, the moon rose over the city when the tides were running high, the lagoon full of rain from an earlier storm. The Sirocco, a wind that originates in Egypt and blows across the Adriatic from the south, was strengthened by unusually warm air. In less than an hour, the winds drove water from the lagoon into the Piazza San Marco, flooding it to a depth of nearly 2 meters. Waves pounded up and over the steps of the basilica, through the Byzantine portals and into the atrium just beneath the mosaics of Noah and the flood. Salt water filled the sanctuary, damaging the geometric stonework of the mobile marble floors, weakening pillars and submerging tombs in the crypt below. Noah builds a door in the hull of the ark, begins to gather the pair of birds and animals God has instructed him to save. Surrounded by pairs of red-legged partridges, ring-necked pheasants, moorhens and mallards, 4 guinea hens and 7 white geese, he lifts a peacock and a peahen in his arms and prepares to put them into the ark while the pelicans and herons wait in line. Pairs of leopards, goats, and antelope stand watching while he guides a lioness, symbol of San Marco, into the door in the hull. God waits for Noah's family to climb aboard and closes the small door from the outside, just as the floodgates of the deep burst open. In the next mosaic, only the heads and shoulders of the people floating in the water are visible, a wall of wavy dark water above and behind them. The Aqua Alta no longer arrives in Venice as pilgrims would, but as a conquering army from a far-off land, all force and no mercy. To watch the footage of the rushing tide is to sense the fear the Venetians must have felt as the water rose higher and higher around them in the darkness. When the waters of the Adriatic Sea reach the mosaics that illuminate the darkness of that sanctuary, the world as we know it will have ended too.
Is that a poem written without borders?
Actually, it's quite interesting because there's indented stanzas where
I
we
can see
hear about the Noah part, right? So it kind of reads as, you know, in a movie you change scenes or something, you know. So or go back.
Well written, that's for
Thank
sure.
you.
Really flowed.
So I was hoping everybody had a word to offer to illicit poetry.
Sanctuary.
Is that your word?
I think so.
No, you can
Change it.
whatever you say. You tell me and I'll read. Whoever has one first.
Transformation.
What was your word?
Transformations.
Like a butterfly.
I'll go with captivating.
Nice. I will go with inelegant.
Mm.
An inelegant, captivating transformation.
So I have I thought of this idea for a type of poem, so I'm going to suggest it to you guys. So we're all familiar with the basic haiku format. Yeah. Yeah. So just a really simple syllabic 575 count, I think, is what I mean here, rather than all the other rules of haiku. So my thought was that we write a haiku 575, but our syllable counts would not be 575; they would be less. But the reader will be 575. So, for example, you would have a 5-syllable line, and the only thing you would write would be Houston. The reader would fill in, "We have a problem." Or you would say, "Hickory dickory," and the reader would read it as Doc, which would be 7. Or "Twinkle, twinkle," and Little Star would make it 7. So you would write each line with less than 575, but the reader would read it 575. Or perhaps you would just sort of write an ordinary haiku, and for whatever reason, one of the lines would be completed by the reader if that fit, that kind of makes sense.
It's like sort of Mad Libs.
Kind
You
of.
can write it and then take out words.
Yeah, but a lot of things, if you take them out, nobody would know what you took out. But if I wrote "Oh say," then you would.
Can you see?
Can you
Sure.
see? You would know.
Yeah, the point of it would be to make it something
So
that is
the idea is that
recognizable.
it's completed by the reader.
Mhm.
It's not. It's implied, but it's not written by you.
Yeah.
So that it's a dialogue, I suppose. Like it requires the reader. And so I wrote a bunch of examples, but that was the
That's
basic
another
idea.
What are they? Is it syllables?
Syllables.
575.
Yeah, syllables. Like if I said Jack and Jill, then you'd complete it to 7. And Jack and Jill went up the hill to 7.
Did you just make that up? Or did you,
It's a nursery rhyme.
no, but I mean, did you just like?
Yeah, that's just.
It's pretty good.
So I thought that would be kind of an interesting way to do it.
So would this be correct? 575, some syllables left out of each line to be filled in by the reader.
Yeah.
Sound
Yeah.
right? Or readers. Interesting.
How does that make a bit of sense for you? So I'm gonna, yeah. So I have a couple on theme. I can read as we think about our end here somehow, unless somebody has one they want to read.
I don't want to read the first one, but if you want to read.
No, good, you can.
So this is a longer poem by Ursula K. Le Guin. And it's kind of another way of writing poetry that we were just talking about, like it's kind of conversational-ish or like prose, but in poetry form. So, also. The reason why I'm learning Spanish by reading Neruda one word at a time, looking most of them up in a dictionary. And the reason why I'm reading Dickinson one poem at a time and still not understanding or liking much. And the reason why I keep thinking about what might be a story. And the reason why I'm sitting here writing this is that I'm trying to make this thing. I'm shy to name it. My father didn't like words like soul. He shaved with Occam's razor. There is never enough stuff. So I guess I can call it what I want it. Anyhow, it isn't made yet. I'm trying one way and another, all words. So it's made out of words, is it? No, I think the best ones must be made out of brave and kind acts and belong to people who look after things with all their heart and include the ocean at twilight. That's the highest quality of this thing I am making. Kindness, courage, twilight, and the ocean. That kind is pure silk. Mine's only rayon. Words won't wash. It won't wear long, but then I haven't long to wear it. At my age, I should have made it long ago, and it should be me, clapping and singing at every tatter, like Willie said. But the mortal dress man, that's me. That's not clothes. That is me tattered. I'd like it to be immortal armor, sure, but I haven't got the makings. I just have scraps of rayon. I know I'll end up naked in the ground or on the wind. So why learn Spanish? Because of the beauty of the words of the poets. And if I don't know Spanish, I can't read them. Because praise may be the thing I'm making. And when I'm unmade, I'd like it to be what's left. A wisp of cheap cloth, a color in the earth, a whisper on the wind. Una palabra, un aliento.
That last phrase translate.
I don't know, I can look it up. What's palabra? What did you
Word,
say?
palabras, word.
Aliento.
Argento,
The color,
silver.
the color in the earth.
Breath. It's aliento. So what's palabra?
One word, one breath. That's great. This one's called Tai Chi Chuan Chai Ti Chuan. It's designed to give you something to chew on. Tai Chi Chuan Chai Ti Chuan. The breath is in, the breath is out. Never ours, nor possessible at any point. The fractal fraction that we reserve and hold and think we have, hid in our lungs, hid in our blood, hid in our bones, was never ours. That little grasp at gasp separated until the tide of exhale inexorably returns, and how unlike the inhale, which herself is nearly but surely not ever returning, and spills the breath back out into the all-around air, everywhere. What we arrogate to hold and call our own over and over is at most in our care. But oh, our mistakenness mounts 20,000 times each day. This breath, no breath, is ever ours. It is not even separate from the great sea, the atmosphere at best, a moment's piddling puddling. These breaths we borrow, which by lips closing, seals often seem ours, are but tidal pools, some sea seemingly left ashore, when waves wash to further shores, abandonment apparentlessly, but the lip seal fails, the spate and send return, the tide pool too rejoins the vast. Prokaryotes began it all amidst bombardment, wresting energy from rock. Life forms, life forms. These breaths we borrow, these tide pools are where life is born, where the parent sea returns to collect her lent pool of breath. 20,000 times each spin upon this axis. Inhale, exhale, respire, inspire. New life, none owned. You have no breath, and yet you get and give life.
You wrote that, right?
Thank you. Do you have anything you want to share? I'll read 2 more short ones if you like, but probably wrap it up too. So this is a pair of short poems. This is from the Poet Arguing with Misunderstandings of Tai Chi series. Tonight, I realize root is not the tree grabbing, is not the tree holding, is not the tree grasping, is not the tree desperate. Root is embrace. Embrace is both ways. Embrace is the way. Both supporting, both listening, both engaged, both connected. Tonight, I root. And then the pair. Tonight, I realize growth is not the tree reaching, is not the tree unfolding, is not the tree rising, is not the tree desperate. Growth is reunion. Growth is both leave and return. Growth is two-way. One-way growth is the way. Both falling into empty, both floating from the known, both disconnect and reconnect, both newfound and old self. Tonight, I grow.
There was a word used in both. Could you read the second one again, please?
Tonight, I realize growth is not the tree reaching, is not the tree unfolding, is not the tree rising, is not the tree desperate. Growth is reunion. Growth is both leave and return. Growth is two-way. One-way growth is the way. Both falling into empty, both floating from the known, both disconnect and reconnect, both newfound and old self. Tonight, I grow.
Is the word desperate in both?
Yeah, as the fourth piece in the opening line of what the tree is not. Yeah, the grabbing, holding, grasping, then desperate.
One is
Reaching,
not desperate,
unfolding,
the other
rising.
was, right?
No, they're both. They're both. The line is not the tree desperate. They're both. Okay. Well, thank you. Yeah, so I give you the theme for next week. Yeah, so we're good. Thank you.
Good. Darcy, sorry you couldn't be here.
Hey.